All right, well, today we got something a little different. We have my wife's Range Rover Evoque Dynamic RS. So we've had this about a year now, and this is my wife's daily. We basically had too many issues with the Palisade, and quite frankly, I was taking it to the dealership way too often for her to be able to drive it reliably. And she always wanted a Range Rover Evoque, so figured what better time than now to go get it. So this is a 2022, and I'll say right off, if you're looking at one of these, get the SE. And the reason for that is because you don't get memory seats and you also don't get power folding mirrors, which is kind of crazy for an over $50,000 car when new. I've actually already worked on this once. I did the front brakes and rotors. You can go ahead and check that video out here. It is, of course, a British vehicle. You know, Land Rover is British, and they're not really well known for their reliability. So why would I pick something like that? Well, honestly, I didn't pick it. My wife did. She wanted it. The trim, the color, the year, all the miles, everything. She kind of just went through and did the whole thing. I put together the deal and we bought it. In terms of maintenance, this is a certified pre-owned. And quite honestly, I don't care if it is a Range Rover Sport, Discovery, Land Rover, LR, it doesn't matter. You want to make sure when you get this type of vehicle that you get certified pre-owned or you get some sort of a warranty with it. Now, in terms of my other vehicles, like the Porsche, it comes with warranty as well. I'm not afraid to do some work on it, but it's just, the thing isn't necessarily routine maintenance, it's random things breaking. Now, I will say is one thing this does not have is air ride or anything with, you know, advanced suspension. And that's obviously going to be one of the really expensive repair items on some of the other Range Rovers. So like the Sport and I think the full body one as well. So now that we got maintenance out of the way, you know, how does this thing ride? And honestly, I got to say, this thing rides a lot better than I thought it would. When you have it up to speed, if you take it up on a highway or whatever, you will notice that it kind of sounds more like a truck than a luxury vehicle. The engine also, you know, here, I'll put a clip real quick of it starting. And yeah, you can just tell that the engine is definitely louder. Like I said, this is not a whisper quiet vehicle, but you know, drivability, it rides really nice. It's really comfortable. You know, it has the leather seats. It has this kind of diamondish type interior. I don't really know. Didn't really like this, but we had to, you know, when you're buying used, you have to take some good with the bad. And one of the things that my wife actually wanted was to have the panoramic moonroof, and she didn't care so much about the interior trim. I will say that this thing has just over 41,000 miles, and this interior being piano black, please don't buy piano black ever. I know Porsche does it with like their 911 and stuff, and when I was speccing one out, I was trying to get away from it. This scratches immediately. I feel like if you look at this wrong, it scratches. And it never looks as good as the day that you bought it. So don't get it. Pause for horses. There you go. You know, this one in particular has the paddle shifters. And I'm gonna tell you that it's fun to have paddle shifters because it's like a mock PDK or whatever. This transmission system is very weird and I can't really explain it. I just have to show it. So right now I'm in drive. I'm gonna go ahead and shift down and I'm gonna go down to 4th. It wants me to be in 7th, which okay, whatever. And now I'm just driving and it wants me to shift up. But here's the thing. It will not get back into its own rhythm for quite a while. So it stayed in 4th gear for a long time, and then ultimately it wanted to be in 8th. Whereas the Palisade and other vehicles that I've driven, when you shift down and then you stop interacting with the paddles, it goes back into drive mode, unless the specific vehicle you're driving has a sport mode. Now, if I kick this over here, it will drop into sport mode, and now I have full control. It's not a sports car, but it is sporty. So yeah, it's like I said, it's definitely not a sports car, but It is sporty. You know, you don't hear too much. I obviously have the windows closed. It's almost winter here, and but you know, you can kind of hear a little bit. I would say overall, it's not a sporty car. If you want a sporty, you know, kind of these micro-sized SUVs, I'll call them, then buy a Macan, which I would love to buy. And honestly, that's what I wanted. But I already have the GT4, and happy wife, happy life. So we got a Range Rover. In terms of me doing my own maintenance, I did mention that it is pre-owned, it's certified pre-owned. So a lot of the things I won't do because they're under warranty and they're covered. Routine maintenance like brakes, oils, things like that. You know, I will do the next oil change that it needs. I did the front brakes because they were kind of squealing. My plan was to do brakes all four corners, but that was my initial plan, and then I kind of just figured I could see with the rotors and everything that obviously the braking bias is towards the front. You know, it was favoring the front, so I figured I'll just do front brakes, and then if it needs it, I'll do the rears. You know, so we're actually going on a trip in a couple of weeks, and I was thinking, you know, I don't have time for an oil change, so I'm just gonna have, you know, shop do it. Dealership wanted over $300, and one of the other shops that I've brought my other vehicles to before will not work on Range Rover or Land Rover at all. I called up, told him what I had, and he said, nope, don't work on them, which I thought was kind of funny. I have some mechanic friends, and they told me that they're unreliable. Also, the parts are really expensive, and in some cases, they're unobtainium, more so probably the older ones. I got those directly through FCP Euro, and then the brake pads I bought through an OEM site similar to I do with the Hyundai, and I bought the brake pads. And the only reason I did that was because they had EBC yellow, I think it was, on FCP Euro, and people were just saying that those are really loud and create a lot of brake dust. And this being a daily, I just didn't want that. You know, my wife drives it mostly. I don't see it that often. Now, in terms of the seating, this is a 5-seater. So you have 2 up front, 3 in the back. You have to be a 3 small people. I would not say you could fit 3 adults, normal sized adults, comfortably, unless you're very, very friendly, because you're gonna pretty much be on top of each other. When you start throwing car seats into the equation, it just gets way more sketchy. There's just not a ton of space. And honestly, I don't think that that's a bad thing. It's a small vehicle. You know, this sits in like the Macan Q3 kind of space, and it works well. Now, of course, for our family being a family of 7, as some of you may know, we don't all fit, and we never have fit inside this vehicle. But for the purposes of my wife driving around and at the time picking up one of our daughters from daycare, you know, it worked out really well. So this doesn't get a lot of family time. We'll take this on date nights, or if 1 or 2 of the kids need to go somewhere for like a sporting event or whatever, you know. So if you're looking at something like this and you're thinking, you know, hey, this would be a really good option, just make sure that it's going to fit your family, or whoever you have to be driving around. Because unfortunately, there are instances where it's just not big enough. Now, as an aside, I don't fully understand this, and I'm sure someone in the comments could tell me. The vehicles on the other side that stopped, should we stop here? Technically, we're not supposed to, right? Because the double yellow. I personally would, because what if a kid has to run across? But I feel like this being a divided highway, I think, you don't have to stop. But anyways, back to the vehicle. Rear trunk space and storage overall is actually not bad. Yeah, we actually took this up to New Hampshire for vacation over the summer. One of my children was unable to go because he got hurt. So we were able to fit everything and everybody in, and it was fun. It was also kind of fun to drive this through the White Mountains. I wish I had gotten some footage of that. Not because it was particularly exhilarating, but mostly the reactions from my kids, because they've been in some of my other vehicles and they had a ton of fun with this. Let's just say, you know, the Hyundai, as an aside, can't quite drive it the same. So honestly wouldn't even try. Quite possibly could flip it over. But anyways, that's enough rambling about vacations and all that stuff. So would I recommend this vehicle, right? That's gonna be like the #1 question that you're gonna have, right? Would I recommend this vehicle? And I'm gonna preface it by saying If it's something that you like, then test drive it and go enjoy it. A couple of additional things before I kind of give my final verdict, if you will. I mean, obviously we already own it, but you know, I have an opinion of it. The visibility is not great. I don't know if you can kind of see it from this mirror, but I'll basically show an example from outside. The rear window is very small. The vehicle slopes back pretty aggressively. Looks cool, but as a result, you have very limited visibility through the rear window. Side visibility, A pillars, B pillars, all of that works really well. No concerns there. In terms of, you know, overall, would I recommend this vehicle? If you get it certified pre-owned and it's lower miles and you can tell the history, so clean Carfax, reputable seller, you know, all that good stuff, then sure, why not? The Range Rover Evoque does have less of the more common, I'll call them Range Rover issues, like I mentioned, simply because it just has less tech and it has less of like the air suspension and all of that. You know, but it does have some things that could be really costly. One example of that is, and it's very hard to show while I'm driving, but this has a heated windshield, which is really awesome in the winter because you basically remote start the vehicle and you come out and all of your windows are ready to go, because these obviously, you know, the side windows, maybe you have to scrape them, but this is a heated windshield, and then the back window has defrost, and it's great. Two problems with that. One, to replace this windshield has got to be expensive. So if you don't have glass insurance, it could be really expensive. Other thing, it's hard to show on camera here, but I'll try a quick little night video. There is like a triangle pattern in the windshield because of the heating element and how it works. That creates a really weird prism as headlights are oncoming. Basically makes it look like every car coming at you has a Christmas tree on its headlights, which at first was very distracting. When I drove the car the first night we bought it, I was actually quite frustrated. I was like, I don't know I could ever drive this because it's gonna bother me. But the reality was it actually wasn't too bad, and now I don't even notice it. But it's certainly something that there's obviously a cost involved with this windshield. You know, so overall, would I recommend this? Like I said, I would say overall I would. If it's something that you want to have in your collection or you want it to be your daily. If you need a bigger vehicle, I would recommend looking at the Range Rover Sport if you want to stay in the Range Rover family. Or quite honestly, I'm partial to Porsche, you know this. I would look at the Porsche Cayenne, or if you needed a smaller one, maybe the Macan or the Q3 from Audi. I lean more towards German, kind of just always have. Find them a little bit more reliable, kind of difficult to work on at times, but overall, I think that it's maybe a better option. The other thing would be if you buy a Range Rover, certified or not, make sure that you have a reputable dealer close by, because a lot of the parts are harder for third parties to get, at least from what I've been told. I have not personally had this issue. Granted, we also haven't had many issues with this. From talking to mechanic friends and just kind of doing some research on the forums and whatever, you know, getting parts can be difficult at times because a lot of them come from England. So yeah, that's my spiel on our 2022 Range Rover Evoque Dynamic Dynamic RS. I swear that has got to be the longest model designation ever in trim level. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions or you're thinking about buying one of those, or maybe you had one and hated it, just, you know, fire off a comment. I'm always curious to hear from my viewers what they think of, you know, what we own, what they've driven. You know, would you go get a Range Rover? I'm curious. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Like, comment, and subscribe. What just happened?